All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN released an article where he was dishing out different draft intel, little pieces of information for every NFL team. And when it came to the New York Jets, I felt like there was some pretty interesting stuff here. So, let's dive into it. The first thing he talked about was the first round pick, Armand Membou. He says, in the days leading up to the draft, several executives were linking the Jets to offensive tackle Kelvin Banks. The Jets, who were aware of that perception and figured it would be a good smokescreen, went with Armand Membou, whose length and football traits remind multiple scouts I trust of a young Jason Peters. We were fine with people guessing what we're going to do, said a team source, who added Membou is just scratching the surface of his potential. Yeah, it was interesting, right? In the pre-draft process, it felt like it was either Armand Membou or Tyler Warren. That was the debate amongst Jets fans. That was the debate amongst, different draft insiders, the Mel Kipers, the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world. And then all of a sudden we get to the week of the draft and it's just no one's talking about Membou. Tyler Warren was still in consideration. But the buzz was Jahdae Barron. The buzz was potentially an edge rusher, a Mykel Williams, someone like that, a Jalen Walker. And of course, as Fowler is alluding to here, Kelvin Banks, right? Rich Cimini was heavy on the Kelvin Banks, not necessarily bandwagon, but his name didn't really start popping up until Cimini started pushing it. But in the end, the Jets wind up with Armand Membou. Fowler goes on to say the Jets aren't overthinking this one. They're keeping Membou at right tackle, noticing that teams sometimes get in trouble when switching a lineman's position too often. Newsflash, playing tackles hard. I mean, what was one of the biggest problems for the Jets' young tackles, or maybe development of younger tackles with this Jets regime over the last 4 years, right? You're always kind of looking at these guys playing different positions. I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but every training camp we're talking about it, right? I'm coming on doing like the practice recap videos that I'm so excited to film. And then I'm seeing tweets from Connor Hughes. I'm seeing tweets from Rich Cimini, Zach Rosenblatt of, Joe Tippmann's playing guard today. Max Mitchell played left tackle yesterday. Now he's playing right tackle today. Mekhi Becton, he's playing on the left side and the right side. Olu Fashanu, he's playing on the left side and the right side, swapping guys around, moving guys' positions. Really the goal is, if one guy gets hurt, we need flexibility there. We don't need to, if we're only signing tackles that can play one position, that means we're going to have to sign multiple offensive linemen to fill all these different spots. So I get it from that standpoint, but the reality is, if you have a young, talented tackle, in the case now with the Jets, you have two young, talented tackles in Membou and Olu, let's not overthink it. Let's just ask the question, where have they played the best throughout their college career? What is the position that they feel most comfortable with? And what is the position that they're going to continue to grow at the best? And the answer is Olu, left tackle, Membou, right tackle. One of the issues potentially about drafting Kelvin Banks is swapping positions around, right? Again, as Fowler's bringing up here, the plan is just, boom, keep Membou at right tackle, slides in beautifully. We don't have to worry about it, right? I'm really excited to just see what these offensive linemen can do in their set positions, and there's no weirdness about the position swapping. Now, look, if you want to have a backup swing tackle, sure. If you want to have, maybe like Josh Myers take reps at guard just in case AVT, who's been another young player that the Jets have moved around, say Vera Tucker gets hurt, say John Simpson gets hurt, and you want to take, backup snaps with Josh Myers at guard, that's fine with me. But I'm not taking the stars of my football team. We can ask the Bills, how many reps is Deion Dawkins taking at right guard? How many practices are the Colts lining up Quentin Nelson at left tackle, right? Let's just keep it status quo. No need to overthink anything. And it seems like that's exactly what the Jets are going to do. And next up, he brings up Aryan Smith. He says that the Jets are hopeful that fourth-round receiver Aryan Smith can curb his drops issue. Expect New York to use him on smoke routes and jet sweeps to utilize his speed early and ease him into the offense. And, I know we were just talking about young offensive linemen with the Jets, but, an interesting kind of development, too, that we've seen over these last handful of years. The Jets have really struggled with developing young wide receivers. I know, of course, the outlier is Garrett Wilson, but at the end of the day, no matter who Garrett was going to be drafted by, he was going to, do good things, right? Like such a talented receiver. He's a top 10 pick, fantastic at Ohio State. But outside of Garrett, you're taking a look at the rest of the room, right? Whether it's Elijah Moore, who didn't really work out. He just signed with the Buffalo Bills on like a super, super cheap deal. Cleveland, it didn't really work out there. They didn't bring him back. Denzel Mims, I believe, is out of football. He was a second round pick that like showed flashes. Obviously, last season, the Jets were very, very, very high on Malachi Corley and proceeded to A, not really use him. And then B, when they did, get him out there, he wasn't really much of that impactful piece. Now, how much of that was Hackett? How much of that was Downing? How much of that was Rodgers? How much of that was Corley himself, right? Not being prepared or whatever the case may be, right? We don't have those exact details. So, when we get to the start of the season, maybe not so much the start of the season. Let's say start of preseason, right? If we're getting positive reports coming out of camp, if we are getting maybe high usage rates in these training camp practices with the starters, with Malachi Corley in the mix, and he's making plays, coming up with big catches and whatnot, then all of a sudden I'll be leaning more so, okay, you know what? This coaching staff just, they had no clue, right? The previous regime. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense that Joe Douglas had Malachi Corley ranked as the 4th best wide receiver in that class. We trade up to go get him. Supposedly the Jets have Corley ranked higher than Brian Thomas and Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy. Like we also what those guys did their rookie year, and Corley's just like a non-factor in the offense. Again, how much of that was him? How much of that was a misevaluation from the front office or the coaching staff? Personally, I'm not going to write him off because the speed, the quickness, the toughness that he showed back at Western Kentucky to me is very appealing. Right, if you're an offensive-minded coach, like, man, I want to get this guy the football. Of course, we had the moment where he dropped the football entering the end zone. I believe that was called a touchback or something, which just, it sucked in the moment. And, I'm sure it sucked for Corley in that moment, having to deal with it. That was like his first big play at the NFL level. But it is what it is, right? It's the next chapter. It's a new year with a new staff and a new scheme. Let's go out and kind of make that impact. But going back to Aryan Smith here, man, if this guy can actually develop, if we have a coaching staff in place that can actually develop young wide receivers. Look at Jameson Williams with Detroit. Starts off a little rocky, starts off with a lot of drops. Now we're seeing a more consistent version of Jameson Williams. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4th round pick. And ironically enough, we actually just saw the Lions trade up in the draft for a receiver out of Arkansas, Isaac Tesla, who, is kind of been labeled as this athletic guy, this high upside guy, but doesn't really have a lot of production in the SEC. So is there maybe a method to the madness? Do the Lions see something in a guy like that? So it should be interesting to see how this young wide receiving room plays out, because all these guys are really young. I mean, even you're talking about, adding someone new, like, the talk right now is Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs is a young player. Chris Olave, he's a young player. Even if the Jets went out and signed Gabe Davis, he's still a relatively young player. So, there's got to be a premium on the development of wide receivers, especially with Justin Fields at the helm, right? He needs to develop too. Yes, of course, there's going to be bumps along the way. There's going to be speed bumps for sure. We can't expect A+ performances every single week in a first-year regime with a first-year quarterback. But I will say, this is the time to iron out those things. This is the time to, if you have a question mark, if you have maybe a red flag coming into the season, coming into training camp, now is the time to figure out how you're going to deal with those potential issues. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.